Are you trapped in endless reconciliations and 3 a.m. deadlines? It's time to break free. Discover how the basics of finance can bring clarity, control, and a new sense of momentum to your entire organization. I've been there when month-end chaos and constant firefighting feels like a normal routine. When you feel that you should be doing way more advanced work, but you keep being dragged back to the basics of data reconciliation or manual processes. Today we are diving into those basics. Imagine how different your finance world would be if the data was always accurate, reports arrived on time, and approvals never caused bottlenecks. Picture your team leaving office at a reasonable hour, stress levels drop, and confidence soars. Today I'll show you how to make that vision a reality. But before that, give me a moment just to quickly refresh the foundations. These are your bedrocks: people, capabilities, systems, and compliance. Think of them as the oxygen that keeps your entire operation alive. No matter which level you focus on, you'll need that strong foundation to maintain the stability. And it all starts with people and culture. It's impossible to build a high-performing team if you're missing on the right mindset, attitude, and the structure. The reason why I keep foundations separate is that I believe you will always have certain level of challenge in this area. The brutal reality is that you will never have perfect systems or afford enough people to fill in for lack of them. So we'll explore how to find alternative solutions. It's also very likely that you will want to work concurrently on foundations and the primary level of maturity at which you are. At the basics level, it's all about securing operational excellence. You would see me referring to it as a cave level as well. No offense, but at least I felt like it whenever I was facing a major problem here. Why cave? Because you are stuck in grinding and spending countless hours on reconciliations and copying and pasting numbers, very often sitting in the dark office after hours, struggling to deliver that next report on time. It's like in ancient times, everyone worked on their own, trying to survive the next cycle or the next report or that next budget. This level includes controls, maintaining compliance and mitigating risks, data reporting and sharing accuracy and reliability, and finally routines and processes guaranteeing a smooth month-end close and the budget cycle. If your fundamentals are shaky, higher level of strategic goals will collapse. So it is critical to tighten those basics first. It probably sounds very basic to you, but let me tell you this. You and your team will always be dragged back into Excel and number crunching if you don't have this level well established. You will never be able to trust your numbers, and above all, the rest of the organization might start doubt the quality of the function if you don't ensure the quality here. So let's make sure that we solve the majority of these first before going to the next level. Let's start with the critical part, but often ignored: controls. Finance can't shine if compliance is shaky. I divide it into basic compliance controls, policies and standard operating procedures, and audit readiness. Basic compliance controls ensure everyone knows the basic rules like tax, GAAP, IFRS, depending on your company, and the basic internal controls like the approval matrix. I'm not talking here about the deep technical knowledge, but there is a certain minimal level of understanding that everyone on your team should have. Similarly as in the foundation, we spoke about the roles and responsibilities there. It is critical for you to define what levels of knowledge is necessary for each member of your team. For example, you will have tax or financial control functions that you will definitely want to have a deep understanding of that compliance. However, for the commercial finance or financial planning, a basic level may suffice. So the critical question here is whether your team is trained in the right controls environment. That brings me to policies and SOPs. As much as the previous point was about the knowledge and more of a compliance culture, here is the hard stuff. Do you have the controls and procedures in place, and above all, the process to ensure that they are followed through? They need to be clear, updated, and accessible to everyone. By far the most critical point here is whether your team is in fact aware of them. It's not enough for policies to sit on the shelf or in the remote folder if nobody is following them. So it's extremely important that you have regular refreshers in place. The critical tip here is that it should be done in an accessible way. So don't think that people will read policies just because you ask them to. Ensure that there is a training available that is not just boring video of someone like me telling you that this is important and just reading from the script of the controls, for example. Make it really engaging for the team. Finally, audit readiness means you never panic when external auditors come knocking. Good documentation, minimal rework, and proactive internal reviews are the hallmarks of the strong control environment. As much as it should result from the policies and procedures, it is an important angle for you to look at in the control environment. Audits can be really stressful for the team, so let's ensure that their lives are easier and that you have a structured way of storing all the documents necessary to back up the transactions and the accruals that you make. Most ERP systems will do that for you, but it could still be a good idea to have a central repository of them that is easily accessible and regularly reviewed and managed by your team. Next is the foundation of all finance operation, data and reporting. Let's face it, this is where we spend most of our time. Understanding, reconciling, and explaining the numbers behind the business performance. And yet it's so often that we are stuck here, not being able to elevate ourselves above the basic data. I divide this area into data accuracy, reports and automation, and diagnostic analytics. At higher levels, we'll talk more about advanced analytics, but here are the basics, without which it's very difficult to develop the finance function. Data accuracy and validation. Without clean data, everything else collapses. This area deserves a separate video to truly talk about it in depth, but I'll summarize the key components here. In the foundations, we spoke about the systems, which are basically enabler of data accuracy and are often closely linked, so if you face challenges in one, most likely you will in the other one too. First of all, you want to ensure that the foundational level in systems is fixed. The key questions will be following. Are all transactions being recorded accurately and flowing between different elements of your system architecture smoothly? Or does it require manual interventions or adjustments? If so, what is the root cause? Is it the system, the way you invoice or receive invoices? Or maybe the granularity of those? You will want to fix and automate those. Second of all, does your most critical data, especially P&L and product customer granularity, sit in one place? For example, a data lake. If not, structuring it and ensuring that you build that one repository is absolutely critical, as it will fit the next point we'll be talking about seamlessly. Finally, do you have the reconciliation routine, verifying your numbers and understanding discrepancies between the systems? This can be a great source of knowledge for you and where to prioritize the effort in this area. Then reports and automation. How consistent and automated are your regular reports? Month-end visibility, forecast, budget, variance analysis, for example. And what about the commercial granularity? And yeah, we all love to develop new views and new reports, but we often forget about the old ones. The critical point here is to have a list of all the reports that the team produces and regularly audits them. Are they still necessary, and how many people actually use them? Can the new fancy view that you want be integrated into an existing report by amending it instead of adding a new one? Once you ensure you have the right level of visibility, we can talk about automation. Commit to yourself that for a period of time you restrain yourself from changing the views and work with the team for those reports to be automated. Only then will they be able to focus on more advanced levels and progress. Finally, diagnostic analytics. Move beyond static snapshots. Real-time dashboards highlight trends before they become problems. Think about variance analysis, rolling forecast, or KPI tracking. It's linked to the reports, but it's more in-depth. Do you have the capability to understand and dive deep into the trends and the most critical metrics? Do you have at least a basic real-time view? For example, daily revenue reporting. I differentiate this area for one reason. Basic reports and automation look at the static view of the numbers. Here we talk about the evolution and the more advanced comparisons and variances, and more focus on the deeper understanding of what sits behind them. Finally, your routines and processes. I divide it into closing and results review, planning and budget processes, and finally approval processes. I dissociate the process from the reports that we talked about in the previous part. I'll talk about the first two as they are very similar, just one looking backward and the other one looking forward. Here you want to make sure that first, you have a clear process established. What is the input, what is the checklist of what actually happens during the process, and finally, what is the outcome. Second of all, do you have a clear ratio between the teams? So in short, who is responsible, accountable, and who needs to be consulted and who needs to be informed during and after the process. It links smoothly to foundational roles and responsibilities you would have defined at the foundational level, but very often it will stretch beyond finance, like for example in the budgeting or forecasting process. 3. How action-oriented are your processes? Do they just focus on reporting the numbers, or do you incorporate clear action plans following them? Let me give you an example where finance often gets stuck. So very often you will have a process focused on just reporting. Here are your numbers, that's it. Maybe some commentary on top of variances, but not much more. This area, if prepared well, will prop you up for the business partnership, and you want to start thinking about driving actions as a result of the process. Do you have the gap for a certain customer or product line? Fine, what are you going to do about it? This is where you will start to influence the business. Finally, approval processes shouldn't be black holes. It is linked to controls, but it's executed through clear processes right here. Clear authorization matrix, integrated workflows, and consistent trails of who approved what and when. These keep you protected and efficient. Hey, if you resonate with the way I look at finance and want to receive more regular guidance and tips, don't forget to subscribe to the Phoenix channel. Yes, we are focused on personal development, and I strongly believe that to be a great leader, you need to ensure your development as well. On top of that, I'll be releasing more strategies on how to elevate each component of this framework. So stay tuned, subscribe, and I'll see you in the main video. Assess and prioritize. Start with a quick diagnostic. If you used our finance health assessment toolkit, it should help you narrow down which of these areas you need to tackle. If you don't have it yet or are ready to bring the real change to your finance function, in the description you will find a link to download our free toolkit. Plan the quick wins, look for simple fixes. Do a quick self-assessment to see which area is leaking the most of the time and causing the greatest risk to you. Start right there. It helps you build momentum behind the more advanced strategies and initiatives that you will want to deploy in the future, and therefore warm up the resistance to change within your team. Key advice: I'm quite sure that if you are at this level, you will spend a good amount of time on the data and reporting. So bring the team together and truly understand what the critical fixes are that you can put in place in the short term before you start talking about way more advanced things. Then standardize and automate. Create standardized templates for reporting, for example. Use macros or scripts to just eliminate the repetitive tasks. Engage data engineers to help your team clean and standardize the data, as well as to create more strategic improvements afterwards. But above all, you personally, assuming that you are leading the team, reflect on how often you request changes and whether you can reflect more on the set of visibility that you will actually commit to for a longer while. Track and refine. Establish KPIs for closing speed, data accuracy, and compliance. Monitor them monthly to tackle the root cause very early on. Prioritize your processes as well. Define what is the most critical for your business and focus on it as you track the progress and move to the next point. Invest in strategic improvements. Over time, prioritize bigger projects. Maybe it's team restructuring, core system implementation, or an upgrade like ERP, for example, or more advanced reporting tools. These tend to take more resources, namely the time of your team and the actual investment. Mastering the basics is your ticket out of the cave and onto the path of the strategic influence. No more drowning in spreadsheets or late-night reconciliations. With clean data, efficient routines, and robust controls, you will earn the trust of your stakeholders and, above all, free up energy to focus on higher-level finance initiatives. If you found this helpful, subscribe for more tips on how to transform your finance function from reactive to revolutionary and more proactive. And don't forget to download the free toolkit in the description below. You will find the link there. Together, let's elevate the finance to the next level.